Give it a second, hold on.
Okay. Yeah, because it's gone back and forth between red and green.
Excuse me.
You're good to start.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Community Planning and Transportation Committee meeting for Thursday, August 22nd, 2024. We have two items on the agenda this afternoon. The first one, as usual, is our public transit report and discussion. And we have staff here, and so we'll go ahead and get started. I think some other council members may come in, so we'll go ahead and get started though. And Taylor is here to lead us in the transit discussion.
Thank you, Chair and Council. I know in your packet you have our report. I first want to start off by saying that we're going to do a little bit of a swap with our operations specialist down here in Norman. So Lamar Hammond in the back, he's going to move back to Oklahoma City, and Larry Wyatt over here, he's going to come down to Norman. Larry actually was here in the beginning. I don't know if you remember Councilmember Holman,
Yeah.
but he helped us get to through that transition period, the initial part. So he's coming back down to do a little switch. So
Wonderful. Okay.
yeah. So you'll see more of Larry in Norman, and definitely at these meetings in the future. And then I just wanted to start off the meeting too by saying that last month signified 5 years of us operating the transit system.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to leave that to go unnoticed. And just a few things that I jotted down really quick that I'm proud of is we didn't miss a day of service during the transition or afterwards, unless it was weather or obviously a holiday or something like that. We've been largely able to overhaul the fleet, which you see in your packet, and we talk about frequently. We updated our long-range plan, the Go Norman plan, and then after that, we were able to successfully buy, renovate, and open a downtown transit center as recommended, and then operate or change the route network as recommended, that first stage. We were able to create a microtransit program, and then finally, in October, we're implementing a frequency increase, which is the next priority in the long-range plan. So a lot done in those 5 years. So I really wanted to say thank you to this body, both past and present, for the support. We would have never been able to do any of those improvements without that support. So it's been a long 5 years, but a very rewarding 5 years of operating transit for the city. So
It's definitely one of the things I'm most proud of during my time on council, and something we started right when Daryl came in. Literally the same month that Daryl took over, we started that system. And just like you mentioned, there's changing the routes is difficult, but it now goes further east and further north than it ever did before. And we took an abandoned building downtown and converted it into a public use that is now very busy. And ridership continues to grow. And on the fleet replacement, one of the things I did even have on my list to ask about is that you have been able, I was reading through there, we've replaced almost the entire fleet that we inherited that was near its end of life then. And you and staff been able to do it seemingly mostly by acquiring grants and other outside funding, and has not cost the city we were thinking millions and millions of dollars we were going to have to come up with somehow. And we've been able to do it mostly with, I think, outside funding, if that's correct.
yeah. Usually 20 or 25% if we want that little bit of extra points on the grants, but yeah, largely done by outside sources. So with, again, council's support for those applications, we couldn't have done it without that support.
Well, it's really remarkable because I did wonder how we were going to do it.
Well, not just upgrading, but, or not just new fleets, but electric as well. So converting.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, multiple different options, the natural gas that we've been doing for years, but the conversion to electric and, yeah, it's been really amazing what has happened in the last 5 years. And, I just like to remind people that if we had not done that, there would be no public transit in Norman operating right now outside of the campus. So, third largest city in the state would have no public transit outside of the university campus. That would just not be right. And anyway, thank you very much for that update.
Yeah, just didn't want.
all great cities have great public transportation.
right.
That's
Right.
proven to be true.
I just didn't want that 5-year milestone to go unnoticed, so appreciate you indulging me there. In the memo, there's a new paragraph. It's on the second page. It talks about the Central Oklahoma Long Range Transit Plan. So think of this kind of the ACOG level transit plan, even though Embark and actually MAPS 4 had funding for this. So Embark got money from ACOG, and combining that with MAPS 4, they selected a consultant, and all 3 public transit agencies in Central Oklahoma are working together on this regional transit plan, which I know may sound a little confusing because we have RTA, but really they are focusing on the work of the RTA connecting the 3 cities. But now we're diving in a little bit more into those connections, and that plan will make a little bit of some recommendations on how it'll all work together. So I'll be giving updates on that monthly as they come about, but that'll be a year process, and hopefully we'll have a regional transit plan in a year's time. So just wanted to bring that forward to council because you'll start seeing town hall notices, other public engagement, some websites, things like that. So it's exciting.
I know Moore is not part of Embark, they're not part of RTA, and they don't have any public transit, but except for the line that goes to the Social Security office. But I did read recently, a few months ago, that their city council, city government was having conversations about transit in Moore and identifying routes if they were to have it. So I don't know if you've been in any communication with any of their officials about that, but I'd be interested to know, where connections might be possible and if they are going to be part of a bigger fixed route bus transit system in the metro or not.
Yes.
And I'd be happy to reach out to Mr. Brooks Mitchell and just let him know we're available in support of their conversation. And that's just where it begins. It just begins with a conversation. And if it's meant to be, those ideas typically find their way to action items. So I think if they're aware of regional planning opportunities and their ability to stay plugged in and not just operate as an island, it would definitely be in everybody's best interest. So I'll reach out and make that connection too. Thank you.
Well, and I know they hired a company to do a feasibility study. So looking at those options, they looked at fixed route, and actually it looks like from what the last I gathered, it was microtransit may make the most sense, at least in the initial phase. So they did reach out a few months ago and asked me some questions about our microtransit program and how that's going. So
Interesting.
it'll be, again, if they implement anything, it'll cost money, so they'll have to consider that. But they did the feasibility study, and it should be pretty close.
They're having that discussion about transit.
About transit, yeah.
So, okay.
And then I want to talk a little bit about service to the Adult Wellness and Education Center. We talked about that 2 months ago, and we plan to come back and provide a little bit of preliminary options on that. We did ask Embark to do some route timing on that route that goes down Porter right now, if we could shift it over to Findlay and then navigate it back to the transit center. What we found out with that route, 121, is it's already pressed for time, and even that slight shift may make it run over that 30-minute cycle consistently throughout the day and have it run even more behind time than it is now. So we also looked at Route 122, which is the 30-minute route that pairs with it, that goes from the transit center, Main 12th, up to Rock Creek and out to Garland Square. And we thought, well, maybe it could go up Findlay to Robinson and to 12th. That one seems more doable with the timing of the 30-minute route, but we'd have to consider the switch of the bus stops on 12th between Robinson and Main. That wouldn't be served any longer, and now we'd switch that to Findlay. And so that would just be a trade-off, and obviously with that change in routes and service, we'd have to go out for public comment and things like that. But we could dive into that a little bit more. It seems like there is a connection being made between Walmart there at 12th and Main and Garland Square and some of those other housing options along 12th. Our heaviest stop that we would lose would be about 4 riders per day at Walmart. It seems going northbound right there. So it tells me that they're going farther out into Norman back to their houses from Walmart. So we lose that direct connection. But the stops in front of Food and Shelter and things like that along Main, those would still be served by 111.
So the stop in front of Jack in the Box, that would go
That
away?
would not be served anymore,
The
right?
one in front of the community services building, that would go away too?
It would,
Both of
but
those.
it wouldn't be a direct connection to the Garland Square area and out north, so they might have to go back to the transit center. So it'd just be a trade-off of folks having to make a connection, those few folks. And then the third option I wanted to present for us to consider was we talked about this, I think about a year ago, when Dr. Dillon came and spoke about all the different programs she runs, not just paratransit in Oklahoma City, but other things. And they run an Embark Well program, which they have a handful of community wellness centers in OKC, but this is designed for elderly individuals that don't qualify for paratransit to get to and from those wellness centers. So just a reminder, for paratransit, you have to have a functional disability that prohibits you from riding the bus, the fixed route bus, to qualify. So this would just kind of expand those eligibility requirements a little bit, but it would be specifically for the AW, or if we could consider another wellness center, but that's really our only city one. So something to think about.
Councilmember Green.
How would that Embark Well program work? Would it kind of be like they'd come to a street, like the on-demand, and collect people, or they go from the house to house to house and then take people to the AW?
So Larry and Lamar may be able to expand on this a little bit more, but they would go to their house, just like paratransit, pick them up and take them directly there. Norman On Demand is a little bit more of a different animal, where we're trying to be a little bit more efficient. So that's why we ask people to walk a little bit farther. But for this type of service, is that right, Larry and Lamar? Curb to curb, yeah. And then that way, we could see what the investment would be for that type of service to get initiated, but we could see what the demand is through that. And we wouldn't be moving a lot of physical infrastructure and creating new bus stops and creating new maps and
That
things
was
like
my
that.
next question, was the cost of the last 2 options.
Yeah.
So it sounds like 122 would be a lot more. What does the Embark Well program cost?
That's something I want to flesh out in the next month. I'm sorry I wasn't able to get those details before this meeting, but I wanted to see if that was maybe the direction we wanted to look at before Embark started going down that path.
Have we asked any seniors or people who use the AW what their thoughts are, or?
Yeah, we did that initial survey. I think we started it later in the winter, early spring. And we only got 30 responses, and it was kind of a limited survey. We really asked, how do you get to the AW? What are your transportation options? About 9 out of 30 said that they use public transit. It didn't split out with paratransit or fixed route, but we could circle back around to that survey question. But I think depending on the cost of the Embark Well program, it may be worth it to just see the demand if we're able to make it work at a low cost, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, maybe that's what some people would prefer, is getting picked up at their house and taken directly there.
And then it would just be basically on demand again, so whoever apply, if they meet the eligibility requirements, because there is an age requirement.
And do you have to set it 24 hours up in advance?
Do you know, Larry?
I don't know about the new program.
Probably, but I'd hate to tell you something else.
Questions for next,
Typically, yes.
or
Yeah, questions
answers
for next time, yeah.
And just thinking about the service, and there might be some questions. How many people can be taken at a time with one of these?
Well, it'd just be like the paratransit units we have now, which we have a mixed fleet. We have the shuttle buses or cutaways that can handle, 14 passengers, 12 passengers. And then we have some minivans that can handle, a wheelchair, but then also a couple passengers in the back or in the passenger seat. So, and then we have some Ford Transit vans that can handle 2 or 3 wheelchairs and then 4 or 5 folks in a seat. So it really just depends on the vehicle, but we also want to get people there in a timely manner. So if we can't get them there while picking somebody else up, we may have to send another vehicle to pick that other person up to get them there in a timely manner, just like paratransit.
And would it run all the days the all is open? It's pretty much 7 days a week, right?
I believe the Oz open 7 days a week. Again, I think that's what we need to flush out with Embark to see if, we want to maybe mirror the program in OKC. So do they just do weekdays? Do they do, Monday through Saturday, 7 to 7? I think we need to flush that out and just see what the costs are. Because that would obviously, again, it's based on demand, but if demand is higher than we anticipate, it may cost more labor hours and more vehicle maintenance and things like that. So.
Yeah, I'm for exploring that. I remember when the all first opened, there were people who were both had physical disabilities or just older that were asking for a public transit option.
Yeah.
So,
And again, paratransit is there available. If folks are already eligible, they can take it to go to the hall, or they can apply and obviously go through that process. So
and paratransit's 24 hours in advance too.
yes, it is 24 hours in advance.
I think now that the Aw's been open for 6 months or so, or longer, maybe another sort of survey about what the current users, now that membership has grown a lot, especially since it opened, what they might think about it or what they're using currently. If the fixed route or this option number 3 that they have, whichever might be preferable. I'd like to see on that option number 2, if we could see at the next meeting what that would look like if that route change was made, like what stops would be eliminated. So how that basically, just how that drawn out, how that would affect the route.
We can put together a
We could do
presentation
that.
next time of
Okay.
those 2 options and just lay
That'd
it
be
out a little bit
perfect.
more clear. So
Yeah, and I can see what the impact would be, and
Yeah.
and if it's not impacting a stop that's near there that does have a lot of ridership, and it would only be impacting a stop that gets very little.
Yeah.
I mean, that's something to consider too. But yeah, I think a couple of options for the wellness center is a good idea. I'd be interested to know, I agree about that option number 3, what's the cost and when would it run, and how convenient is it for the user to use that type of stuff.
we can definitely put that together, and I can see if Dr. Dillon can come accompany me
Okay.
next time, so she knows a lot more about those programs. So. And then the other thing we talked a little bit about a couple months ago was the Norman Transit Center Porter Bay, and maybe having some street furniture there. And so the benches that we use at the transit center now that we got with the renovation are relatively low cost. I looked them up, and they're about $600-700. And then I worked with engineering folks to go out there, and we could, by not impacting the sidewalk, add some concrete on the back end of the sidewalk, so we keep that whole sidewalk open. And it looks like for a low cost, we could go in there and put a bench in and have that available if that's what council wants to do. It looks like with the concrete in one bench, it would be less than $3,000 for sure. So if that's something we want to maybe put some more pen to paper and make sure those costs are correct and go out and do it, we can certainly do that.
That ledge that's there that they sit on currently,
Yeah.
that concrete, just this part of the building. I mean, there's a way to incorporate that into it if we don't need to add a bench. we could make that part, I don't know, it's just thinking creatively with how it's being used already, and just making it more of this is a stop and where you can sit type of thing.
I'd have
I
to
don't know.
really look at that from an ADA perspective,
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we call it the seating area, we'd have to obviously provide a companion seating.
Yeah,
So
There's
That's
also
something-
height and depth
Yeah.
restrictions
yeah, so if
to
you
make
put
it.
concrete in, that probably makes it higher up then, so.
Yeah. So if we would informally leave it that way, I don't know that we could stop people from sitting there, but I'd be
Right.
hesitant to call it.
Just
the
thinking of how
seating
it's
area.
being used and how it's just
And
a
honestly,
feature of the building.
If we put a bench down, we may not stop people from sitting there anyway, but
Yeah.
there would be another option.
Okay, Councilmember Grant?
I'm supportive of the bench. We're putting one out there. The feedback I get the most from people in Ward 4 is like more benches, more covered bus stops, and trash cans by those.
In the whole system, right? Not just at the transit center. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
And that is something, I know it's been a long time coming, but we're working with Tyler Media, who owns and manages those bus stops, the advertising ones, so we don't have to maybe strategically add new locations now that we have the route network solidified, the routes are there and gonna stay for the foreseeable future. They're more willing to go in and plop down some more street furniture for us and our customers to use. So
I was gonna say, how do the trash receptacles marry up? Like, is that sanitation works with you, or are you guys in charge of putting trash cans by at least the covered ones?
So if it's an advertising shelter or bench, Tyler Media is responsible for taking that trash out. Now, it may not be taken out as frequently as people want, so we try to, if there is an issue between them coming out and taking care of it, we might have to send a staff person to take it out. But that's Tyler Media's to manage. We don't put a trash can at every stop because Tyler wouldn't be able to
Take care of
essentially
all
make
of it.
money off of, because they're recouping the cost of the shelter, the pad, the labor to be able to maintain it. So in Oklahoma City, they've actually had to hire folks in Embark to start taking care of bus stops because Tyler Media just couldn't keep up with it anymore with the amount of infrastructure. But that's how it works. If there is a need for trash can, we request Tyler Media to put one out. Oftentimes we find that it actually makes the problem worse because then people put trash in there, obviously, and then it kind of gets fuller than you would think. And with Oklahoma wind and weather, it gets everywhere. But we like to remind passengers there's trash cans on every bus. Please bring it with you, throw it away on the bus. And that really helps a lot. So
Then just that space between the sidewalk and the building, on facing Porter right
Right.
there, to make it look more like a stop, I guess.
yeah.
Since it seems pretty heavily used.
Yeah, I think our initial thought was because it's not that far away from the actual transit center building,
They might
folks
hang out
could
in there
just
and walk out.
sit in there and watch and wait for the bus if they're waiting on one right there. Or there's benches under the overhang, again, right there at the middle building, but it seems like people do like to sit there and wait on the bus
Yeah.
at the Porter Bay, so if we need to accommodate that, we can certainly do that.
And then regarding the transit center, we've had discussions and public comment before about security or safety. Any notable issues in the past few months that you've heard about or know about, or that have caused concern for us to consider security? We've talked about that before, or any other measures.
Yeah, we may bring that back to you next meeting too, or a future meeting. There's always been some issues that would pop up, but the last 2 or 3 weeks, a month, it's really increased for some reason. And just varying degrees. I don't need to get into the details of any of them, but I have revived the cost that Embark provided us, because they hire a private company to come in and provide security.
Right.
And they were willing to work with that company to basically do a pass-through cost for them to provide the same services down here for us. I'm also asking PD what that may look like as a partnership, but as council knows, they're down, officers. They always have people out training, so they're already putting a lot of people in overtime just to cover what they cover. So it looks like we might need to circle back around to that private security option. And I kind of had two quotes, if you will, a somebody there for 8 hours a day, so we operate 15 hours Monday through Friday, so it'd be about half. But, you know, it would cut the cost down considerably. We can kind of strategically pick those 8 hours.
And yeah, based on call activity
Right.
through PD, we could really target when the activity happens, and the nature of the types of calls they're seeing. So,
Yeah.
yeah, we could pull some PD reports and help.
Yeah. So that was my initial thought, or we could look at the 15 hours Monday through Friday, but obviously that would be almost double the cost, just with the labor hours, so.
Councilor Grant?
Yeah, I support looking up those details. I was kind of curious, since you said it was the last few weeks, if, you know, heat might play into it, and if these were like mental health issues or irritability like fighting. I'd be very curious to see if it's kind of a trend that you see in the summer. Maybe you have more incidents than other times of the year.
Well, this is our first summer as a city operating our transit center, and so before that, we used the University's Brook Street Transfer Station. And even when I was at OU, we didn't really get a lot of calls, complaints, because it was all outdoors. I think people just were maybe a little bit more spread out, but now that we have a building that people can congregate in, it might be causing some more issues, but.
More people coming into contact with each
Yeah,
other.
so I think maybe having a presence there would be helpful in some respect and help us maybe cut down on some issues. So we can certainly revive that and bring it back to council too, what the cost is,
Yeah.
just so we can consider it.
I think it'd be helpful to know the 8 and the 15, like
Yeah.
what that would look like,
Okay.
what options are there.
And certainly PD is helping out anytime Lamar or Larry's supervisors come, call for an incident, they come out and help with those. But again, it'd be nice to have somebody there kind of proactively, maybe shutting some of those incidents down. So.
And the transit center itself, though, is functioning well so far, almost a year into it.
Yeah, thankfully, we haven't had any major restroom issues in the last few months. It's, that was kind of a problem in the first few months, but other than that, it seems to be functioning fine.
The asphalt and then the concrete on Comanche and all that stuff.
Well, the asphalt is, functioning fine. That's always been a problem too. We're actually looking at programming some of our FTA money that we get for capital projects that we get on an annual basis to concrete those
Right.
bays. So that's something we're looking at to do internally, just to help out with our capital budget, so we don't have to foot the 100% bill.
Probably would
Get
save
that
money in the
done.
long run.
I think so, and it's just not great, as you guys can see if you go over there. So we thought it would last 2 or 3, 4 years. Maybe it was 2 or 3, 4 months. So it's some old infrastructure, and those are not light buses. So.
Okay.
Yep. And then another specific incident that had happened twice over the last couple months. We have some. I don't want to broadcast it to the world, but we have some switches on the back for the power. And a couple people have found that out, and they'll go back there and turn the power off to the whole building. So we're looking at adding a fence back there. If you see that pop up in the next few weeks, that's why. Where the meter is, it's just things happen when people are around, right? So we're trying to curtail some of that.
Okay.
And then I know I've kind of gone over my regular time, but I just quickly want to talk about the ridership. So you have 4 reports with this packet. We have the Embark report for June and July, and then we have the Norman On Demand report for June and July. In the June report, I just want to mention again, with the end of the fiscal year, we had 403,229 riders last fiscal year, and that's an increase over last fiscal year of 2023 of 330,398, and that's about 22%. So I don't want to promise a 22% increase every year, but that's a great year. I think we're still rebounding. Well, I keep saying that, but I have to remind myself 330,000 is the last year pre-pandemic total that we had. So that was last year OU operated. So my hope is that we keep expanding on that ridership with the route changes, that people are finding that easier to navigate. But obviously, probably 5% or less is probably more reasonable as a growth than 22%. So we'll have to continue monitoring it. But if you look at the July report, we did go up slightly for July over last year. So that seems to be continuing trend that will, like I said, continuing to monitor. But for July, we had a ridership of 34,000, and last year we had 30,000, so pretty good increase. And once we get to October, November, we'll start comparing the route changes, right? So that might slow down right there. For Norman On Demand, we ended the fiscal year with 25,801 riders. And then in July, we had 28,708, or we had 2,984 in July. And that 2,984 was a pretty good number for July. Students are out of town. Just for comparison, in June, we had 2,163, so about 800 more than June. So we think that was a little bit of operation efficiencies, having those Norman On Demand shifts figured out with our operator and getting more drivers on the road. But we're excited to begin year 2, which really began last week, and we'll continue operating that and come back to council every month in here, but also when we start budgets again, if we want to consider that program again for a 3rd year. So
It's very heavily used on Campus Corner, I'll tell you that.
yeah.
People using it to get to and from. And I pretty much use every opportunity I can to tell people about it, if they haven't used it before, to try it out. And now it goes a little bit further than it did before, and the Safe Ride seems to be working really well.
Yep.
And really popular. And I don't see any fewer Ubers and Lyfts on Campus Corner either because of it. So, I mean, so they seem to still be picking up quite a few riders in that area anyway. I did note the 22% increase as well in ridership, which I think is really impressive, and you know, that more people are using, for whatever reasons, using public transit more, finding that it's more efficient, that it goes to the more places where they're trying to get to, or because they have to use it, whatever the reasons are. But I think it's good that we're seeing more people using that option. I did notice too that on fixed route, the passengers with wheelchairs or other mobility devices almost doubled from last year to this year. Maybe it was June to June, but seeing more people, looks like we're seeing more people using the fixed route that have wheelchair when they could use Embark Plus, but they're using fixed route for whatever reason as well.
Yeah, and that could be the same reason. It's easier to get places,
Yeah.
more efficient, and they just want to be a little bit more independent, go when they want to go and things like that. So we're happy to see that number go up too, because ideally those are potential paratransit folks that are not using paratransit, which costs significantly more per
Fixed
hour.
ride is more cost effective
Yes.
from the operator's
But
perspective.
then you look at the paratransit numbers and they're not going down at an alarming rate. So my hope is though that some of those trips are being
Yeah.
curtailed to fixed route. So that's the goal. If we can make fixed route more efficient and easier to use for folks, then people in wheelchair scooters, you know, the kind of 8-year-old to 80-year-old concept, if we can make it work for those folks, then we'll get everybody in between too. So.
Yeah. And then the last question, I wanted to see if your staff could look into, I think many of us have been getting lately since the hospital services moved to the new hospital, ER services. So is there any way you can track to see if there are more people using on-demand and fixed route or Embark Plus to get to the Healthplex or to the ER number 9, since the Porter campus is no longer a functioning hospital? If there's anything noticeable public transit wise with that change.
Yeah, we can certainly look at that. It was just last month.
Yeah.
Okay, so we may have to give it a month or two to see the real data.
If there's more people riding that route or
Right. For
requesting rides.
Norman Regional 9, the only service would be Embark Plus right now. Norman On Demand doesn't go out that far, and neither does fixed route. But we certainly, a priority was serving the Healthplex with Route 110. So we, obviously if there's an emergency, we want people to use the ambulance service.
Can we-
911. But if they're going out there for outpatient or
Yeah.
clinics, then they can certainly take the bus.
That made me think about if we could, I know we're starting a new contract with the Embark, or not Embark, but On Demand. Could we see what it would cost for it to go to the number 9?
Yeah, we can definitely
If that
explore
was
that.
in the service area. Don't know if people in an emergency want to use that to get there, but they might not have any other way and don't want to call an
Yeah,
ambulance.
well, I believe there's some doctors out there that you might have to see by appointment,
Yeah.
kind
There
of
are.
clinic. So there could be a need for that.
It wouldn't hurt to see what that might cost.
Okay.
Okay. Any other transit questions from council? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, Taylor. I appreciate the
Thank you.
update. I look forward to talking about it some more next month. All right, number 2 item on our agenda today is a discussion regarding the Constitution Street Bond Project from Jenkins to Classen, part of the 2019 voter-approved bond program.
And we get pictures, yay.
Yeah, engineering, I have pictures. That's the only way we can communicate. Thank you for letting us come and talk to you about this today. As we're working on this program and as we see Jenkins getting close to going out to bid, one of the next priorities we want to get to is Constitution. We really felt like we needed to make sure what was going on with Jenkins before we could move on Constitution, since they really tie together. And maybe those almost could have been one project together, it was just really big to put it together. As we're seeing with the increased costs that we're seeing across all projects since the beginning since we did the cost estimates of the 2019 bond program, ODOT is saying 65% increase in construction costs, and we, from our records, think that's a low number. So we're seeing project costs almost double on some projects. So we're starting to face some funding constraints, but also on this one, we have some engineering and technical constraints. So we kind of wanted to come to this committee first and discuss some potential options we may be able to utilize to get this project moving forward a little bit better and resolve some of our issues, both with cost and with the technical issues. And I brought Tim Miles in today. He's the acting city engineer right now, and he's also the project manager for this project. And I figured he could probably say it all much better than I can. So I'm just here to help out and answer any questions, and I'll turn over to Tim.
It's our next high-volume roundabout project.
Absolutely. Yeah. So now that Jenkins, everything's done with that, basically, ready to go to bid.
Noticed all the utility stuff's gone now. All the
Yeah,
equipment's
overhead,
gone.
electric, most of those poles are gone.
Cooler's
By
front
next
yard
week,
is
by next week, you won't
not
see much
disturbed at
there.
the moment.
That'll change the skyline dramatically, not
Yeah.
having all that
Yeah.
overhead.
So the same consultant, Friesen Nichols, is doing both projects, Jenkins and Constitution. At one time, they were running at the same schedule, same progress. And then we started having some issues cost-wise, right-of-way rise, and potential redesign at Constitution and Imhoff. Jenkins originally didn't have the roundabout in it.
Right.
It was originally planned with T intersections at Imhoff and Constitution. And then talking to OU, and we knew that they had concepts out there where they were proposing this redesign. So we started looking at that, and we're progressing that way. At one point, they were gonna donate the right-of-way for the realignment portion, then they decided they wanted paid for it. So there was a lot of negotiations, and at one point it got where we didn't know what this design was gonna look like at Jenkins, so we had to pause Constitution. And so now we're ready to talk about that project, which basically starts at Decatur, where the Jenkins project will end. So basically 2 blocks east of Jenkins is where this project will start, and then continue basically to the railroad tracks towards Classen. So this is kind of the overview map of that. So when we paused the project, we were at 60% complete, and just kind of give you a reminder of what the design looks like. We're basically going to reconstruct between Decatur Avenue and Ryan Avenue, or just west of the OU golf course. So we can do underground stormwater improvements, as well as widen the roadway to 3-lane to allow center left turn lanes along the roadway. Of course, we have the new trail project that I don't think was even in the works when we were planning out this project. So that's constructed on the north. We're gonna be able to utilize that. We were proposing adding a sidewalk along the entire south side of this project. And then the segment basically between Oak Tree and the west limits of the golf course was gonna be a mill and overlay. It's already curb and gutter, pavements in relatively, the subgrade is in relatively good condition, so, and we don't need to widen it because there aren't any turns or anything. So basically that section is more of a mill and
The
overlay.
bridges, between the section that goes over through the golf course.
Yes, yeah, just that section. So as Scott mentioned, we want to talk about a couple of design challenges we have. And then, of course, he mentioned costs. This was one of the projects that was anticipated to receive federal funds. At this point, we don't have federal funds secured, so we may have to city fund it at some point. And so anything we can do to keep costs down, the better.
And part of the reason that we haven't with those federal funds is this is not on the ACOG tip, or the Encompass 2045, I believe is what they call it now. So that's part of the reason it hasn't been on there. We have been working with ACOG to get this included so that we can start applying for those federal funds, and we will continue down that road. But we want to have ourselves set up to be able to do whatever step we can do to get this project
Yeah,
in a timely manner.
it's surprising because it is it's the only connection from east to west from Lindsay all the way to Highway 9.
Well,
2-3
and,
miles.
and actually, we applied last year, and they said this isn't on the tip, and we thought that it was.
Yeah.
So there's been some confusion there, but we're trying to get that remedied and get this on. So it's one of the items that we're working on with ACOG.
So basically, the two challenge areas are between the bridges. The first challenge area, the two bridges on the golf course that handle the majority of the water that flows north and south in this part of the city. On the east side or the right side, there's the tributary to Bishop Creek that basically flows south under Constitution and then immediately turns west and parallels Constitution until it enters into Bishop Creek when the water continues south, then south of Highway 9 and all that. Well, there's some slope stability issues in that area currently on OU property that we will impact if we add sidewalk on the south side. So that's what we're going to talk to you about. And some additional slides have a little bit more information about this area, but so we have a concern about putting the sidewalk along the south side through the golf course area. We already knew it was going to be a challenge because there's some steep slopes. It was going to require retaining walls and also handrails for safety as well as the sidewalk. So it was going to be costly. Now we have this on top of it. And then the railroad crossing, which I'll go into more detail as well. But we had a lot of discussions with the railroad, BNSF, when the trail project was being done. We tried to get them to add the pedestrian crossing plate during that time of the whole reconstruction of that intersection, and they just didn't want to listen to us about it. And that's kind of what we're finding on a lot of these. They don't like adding any new crossings that they don't already have. And so we may, we haven't given up on this completely, but there's some resistance there, and they may not end up allowing us to put this crossing in. So, driving by there, the trees and the fence kind of shed the problem area, but just behind the fence that OU has for their golf course is a pretty steep slope. And that's right where the tributary of Bishop Creek comes through. And it's just cutting back towards the roadway. It's a private property problem. At some point, they're gonna have to address it or they're gonna lose their fence. But if we basically add a sidewalk and a retaining wall, we're adding more load to that, and it's gonna make it make it less stable. So something we would need to address with the project. We would likely need an easement to get out there and then a fairly costly repair. This slide just basically shows something that Red Rock Consulting provided when they did the slope stability issue. It's showing the soil types that are kind of erodible types. It doesn't have a real high factor of safety, and And with the water that flows through there, it's not if this is gonna fail, it's when it's gonna fail. And so at some point, either OU or the city is gonna have to address this particular area.
Tim, if riprap were applied on that yellow bank, does it slow erosion or prevent erosion?
Yeah, it's gonna slow it, but really our consultants have looked at it and they're thinking it needs more like sheet piling or some kind of retaining wall and then riprap, basically to keep it from cutting back.
It's gonna need a mechanical way to help stabilize it. Riprap alone is not gonna be adequate for this because of the soil types and the way the forces react.
Have y'all talked to OU about it, and do they have any thoughts, if so?
We have not yet, just because Jenkins got kind of contentious. When we found out about this, we were waiting to address this project till after Jenkins was completely signed, sealed, right away, everything. So we have not. And this will be a discussion we'll want to alert them of, even if we don't participate with the repairs. So the next is the railroad crossing, and I kind of said everything I was going to say earlier. Basically, we tried to get the crossing when we did the hike bike trail. Traffic was basically had this project, and they were the ones working with the railroad, but they just were hesitant and wouldn't install it with this project, even though they knew we had another one coming up. So basically, we have some alternates, some solutions for you to think about. If we do eliminate the sidewalk, and my biggest concern, I guess, is between Oak Tree and the west limits of the golf course, even more than the railroad. But because we have such a nice trail system, because most of the businesses are on the north side, the most used route, I think, from people coming from Oak Tree will be crossing Constitution. They'll want to cross Constitution and then go east and west from there. So if we would put in a signalized crosswalk, I think this would better accommodate the majority of the people than if we had, just a narrow sidewalk on the south side of the project. Now, going to the east, there are a couple restaurants there that people would have to, if they used the sidewalk the entire route, which we would encourage, it would be a little bit longer route, but they could get there. And so these are kind of two separate things, and so we're going to ask direction on both of them. But so we have some options here to talk about. And what we would probably propose is something similar to a Hawk system. In fact, we have one that's going to go in on 36th Avenue Northwest there at Ruby Grant. So.
And that's a stop controlled action.
Yeah, so basically it's a 3-head system that the heads are black or not lit up the majority of the time until somebody pushes the button to actuate a crossing, and then it has a series of going from yellow to red to flashing red to let motorists go, that they know they can proceed if the area is clear. So this would be a type of signal that we would propose at this location if you were receptive to eliminating some of the sidewalks.
So the one on 36 though, that will be
That'll
on
be
a
kind of a
straightaway,
mid-block.
though, like it's stopping traffic that's doing this. In this scenario though, it's at a intersection.
It's a little
where
bit
people
out
are
of the
turning left
intersection, yes, and
in
I
two
asked
different
David,
directions, yeah.
I asked David Riesland about that, and he didn't have issues because if cars are coming westbound, they're gonna be blocking that turn. And if you're making a left turn, you're gonna have room to pull through and you'll see the lights and you'll stop. So
People from Oak Tree that
From
are
Oak Tree
turning
making a
onto
left.
Constitution,
Yes.
they'll see that red and
yes,
they're gonna stop in the middle of the intersection there.
well, they would stop. There'd be storage there for them to stop, and then once it's blocked, then people would wait.
I would say if we did do that, I would want to have that median, that actually constructed into a raised median in the middle right there.
kind of give you a safe spot.
Yes, where they can crop, like in the picture, like that, and not just the painted.
That could be included in this project quite easily, and it may be just a small island.
That way they have something to,
But another item that really makes me like this option a whole lot is it's gonna be able to get cyclists that are gonna be coming from further south across safely and onto the multimodal trail. Where right now, even if we didn't have this in any way, they would have to find their way to get across and dodging between cars or looking for open space. This is going to give cyclists, people with mobility devices, a much safer way to get across and utilize the 10-foot multimodal trail.
have we done a traffic study on this intersection in recent time?
As
there
part
any-
of the design, they're doing that, and they'll look at it again
If
because we've
there's
had
any
enough
plan
time.
for an actual traffic signal at this intersection or anything like that?
That was not proposed, so it must not have met warrants at the time, but that will be something we recheck as we bring this back.
I'd be interested to know if a actual signal is anticipated to be needed at this intersection at any time in the near future or not. Councilmember Pico?
We're not creating any kind of negative condition, like being too close to the train tracks, are we, with cars stacking up and potentially, I can't imagine the thing's gonna be
Yeah.
activated long enough.
Right, that's what I'm thinking too, yes.
Just wanted to bring it up.
That's a good point. And this picture doesn't show it, but if we go back to some of the earlier slides, all those side streets between the golf course and Jenkins, like Decatur and Lawrence and Monitor, all them, none of those have sidewalks now. So really, people aren't gonna use the sidewalk on the south side and then go south from Jenkins. I don't think at a high
The
volume.
sidewalk goes to Dewey from Jenkins currently on the south side of Constitution. And then it ends at Dewey and turns into a dirt path that people
Right,
use.
it parallels, but it doesn't go south. There's no sidewalks going south.
Oh, like going down those streets, right,
So,
yeah.
so people on the south side that would walk on the south side really are gonna go to Jenkins before they go north or south if they're staying on a sidewalk. And we would, and that's one thing we can talk about. We have some costs in here too, but I think the project would be willing to reconstruct all those sidewalks that are on OU property with the project if they're willing to, donate the easements to do the work. I'm not real excited about purchasing easements after all we've gone through on Jenkins, so.
It would be an improvement for them
Right,
and their
exactly.
property, I would think.
Yeah, you can see the people are already walking on it.
Yeah, OUPD's down there.
And what we're hoping is this will take them to using a multimodal path on the other side because it's gonna be a safe way to get across and a better path and more usable.
And I don't think it's used hardly at all now with the new trail on the north side, that sidewalk on the south, but from what I've seen when I've been out there for the project. So yeah, we talked about the Hawk system. I've talked about most of the pros and cons, I guess, that I came up with. If we could avoid the slope stability and issue and let the private property deal with it instead of the city paying for it, I'm a fan of that. This crossing, I think, will benefit a lot of people by having that in there. And we do believe that the majority of the people will use the north side going east or west from Oak Tree more than they would if they stayed on the south side. I'm going to talk about costs here in a minute, but we think we could save the project up to $450,000 or so. The only cons would be if you really do want to go like east from Oak Tree to the businesses, the couple of restaurants on the south side, or if somewhere on campus between Jenkins and the golf course was your destination, you'd be crossing Constitution twice. But for the most part, and there could be some vehicular delays, but again, this crosswalks, these kind of signals are pretty efficient. They allow the cars to move as soon as the pedestrian has cleared the roadway. So these are some of the rough costs that we've come up with. A Hawk signal, including the additional design, would be about $135,000. That would be added to the project. Friesen Nichols estimates the low side to fix that drainage problem or the erosion problem would be about $80,000. So if we don't do that, that takes that out of the project. Those railroad panels, anytime the railroad wants to we touch or a crossing like that, they seem like they want to do the whole street crossing, and that's been $75,000-$80,000 every time we do something like this.
Oh, what's that?
But
So no, they just redid the whole crossing.
right, they did, but this will be, 3 years down the road or something, and by that time, they're gonna wanna redo the whole thing and have us pay for it.
What they tell us in trying to discuss it, because I've had lots of conversations about Brooks with them on this, is that I guess they can't just add the road panel off to the side, and I guess it changes the elevation. They wind up having to do work on, I'm not a railroad engineer, but basically they tell me they can't just add this. That's not an option that's available, and so they wind up having to basically rework the whole crossing to get it in.
Interesting.
And on Brooks, the cost they're giving me is $130,000, and they're willing to split it with us
Nice.
if we build the sidewalk for them. And that's something that we can talk about at another meeting.
Right.
But
We've
we
already
need to
built
do
the
that.
Approaches to it, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's about $59,000 worth of easement just to construct the sidewalk west of the golf course, between Jenkins and the golf course, or Decatur and the golf course, that we have not negotiated with OU at this point. Again, I'd be in favor of putting in a new sidewalk in that area if they donated the easements. And then, so if we eliminated all the sidewalk on the south side, that's $132,000 less on the project. The retaining wall needed, which is primarily between the two bridges on the golf course, that'd be $108,000 less. And then the handrail that's needed is about $132,000. So if we do these two things, we'd save the project about $450,000.
Councilor Pecan.
I know you probably don't have the answer, but do you have any idea what a raised median would be to add that back in?
I think it's gonna be a minimal amount. There already is one on the other side of the intersection for the railroad quiet zone.
Okay.
We wouldn't have to add it for a long distance, so it would be a minimal cost.
I would like to look at some other alternatives in that area too. I think this may be a location where we would want to consider maybe even doing a raised pedestrian crossing at that location, and then having the pedestrian refuge area in the middle and do it all. And I think that all of that combined, I don't know, I'd say what, 25 to 30,000 max?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, it
that's
wouldn't be a
me
lot.
thinking high.
When you say a
that's-
raised pedestrian connection, you mean like a speed table?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So
Not
it really,
quite that, not quite that aggressive. It's more,
yeah, it's more,
It's a flatter
but
slope.
it really brings a highlight to the fact that this is a pedestrian area. It really, and it's really becoming more and more recommended, and I don't want to call it a best practice, but I think we could do something like that here, and that would really help with the increase in the pedestrian and cyclist traffic that we'd expect if we did this.
I love that. Speaking my language right there.
Councilor Green.
I like the raised pedestrian crosswalk idea. I think that was something I saw in one of the ad hoc committees for the urban design implementation plan. So we'd love to see that kind of infrastructure out there. When we talk about saving 450,000-ish on this, that means it stays in that bond program.
Yes,
well, but we're already short money, so that just helps us get it closer.
Get back to zero.
Okay.
But you can shuffle it back to other.
yeah.
If we save money, for example, if Jenkins comes in under what it's estimated, some of that money could go here, and maybe between these two things, we'd have enough to build it.
Okay,
And we're anticipating funding fully Porter and Gray by ourselves, and now we're not having to.
Right. Yes.
Some, but there's a lot of projects that are over budget, so.
so this would be like
Well,
value
and-
engineering.
And with the ads that we did on Gray Street to make it match a lot of the extra funding that we received went back into the project to do those other betterments, like to make it more like Main Street, to add some additional landscaping, to add the nice intersections, some of the sidewalk improvements. So we kind of started eating into that money to meet requests that we had from council and from the public, which we thought were all
Yeah.
great adds to the project.
Okay, that was just my question on that. Thank you.
This intersection, very familiar with it. It is very awkward because it is, as you Classen and Constitution is a very busy intersection. It's become much more busy since the Walmart. More development has happened on Classen. That space between Constitution on Classen and 12th, that space right there is gets very backed up, those two intersections being next to each other. And a lot of the traffic coming west right there comes across the tracks, and then that middle lane is a left turn only. So you see a lot of people veering over to continue going west, or you see people trying to get over so they can turn left because they're in that far lane. And then people turning off of Oak Tree, turning left onto there while the traffic is coming across the tracks. It is just kind of it's busy in my experience, and it is kind of awkward how it functions really. And so definitely interested in trying to make it safer somehow.
And those reasons that you just listed
Yeah.
is part of the reason I think this is also, if we go with the Hawk system, having that raised,
Yes.
it's gonna have a slowing effect. It's going to make it more alert, people more alert to the needs of that area. And that's kind of why I think this is a good area to put that in.
I would like to, if possible, to have a kind of more in-depth look at that intersection, if it's not already being done, about collisions or pedestrian stuff or general traffic counts. If it, like I said about the traffic signal, if it is close to meriting an actual signal at some point.
Part of the design process looks at all that. And if that's one of the things they would come back to us and say,
I think
you're
so.
meeting warrants, we need to put a signal here, or it's not. And the fact that they haven't proposed it 6% plans tells me at the time that we were completing the work, it didn't.
Okay.
But we can certainly, like I said, we've had enough time lapse now that we would want to redo that, or at least have them reevaluate, and that can certainly be done.
So I would maybe not like it to hinder the progress of the actual street project, but I would like to continue working towards there being a sidewalk on the south side, even if it's just 5 foot, because I know the bridges already have a 5-foot sidewalk built into them
Are
on
they
the side.
5 or 4?
They might be 4,
They
but
might
they're,
be 4.
yeah,
They're
they're,
narrow.
That's still ADA accessible though, so.
That's minimum.
and I don't love the idea of a sidewalk hugging the curb necessarily, but it sounds like this issue isn't gonna go away, and it could impact the golf course. I know they've been putting a lot of money into the golf course lately. I'm assuming OU is gonna wanna fix this issue, and I wouldn't mind partnering with them on it if it meant we could get our path through there and stabilize the bank and all that stuff for Bishop Creek.
Remember when we did the large project there when back during the flooding, if you remember, there was a tree fell.
Yeah,
There was already
yeah.
some blockages. It made the water go directly east and it washed out a tree. The tree fell, the tree knocked out our sanitary sewer line. It was a great domino effect.
Yeah.
And when we did that, we worked closely with the university to do some of those improvements, added a lot of riprap, did a lot of cleanup on Bishop Creek south of the bridge. And at that time, we were noting this area had a problem and pointing it out to them. So it's, at that point, we could be out there and go, that doesn't look right. But it wasn't bad enough that anybody reacted at that time. But over time, we were seeing a little more degradation.
Well, and so maybe they'll be interested in actually fixing that issue, and maybe it would take some effort on elected officials' part to help see if OU will work with us on the easement part of it. My main reason for wanting to keep a sidewalk in this section on the south side somehow is all the people that live in this area live on the south side of Constitution. All the apartments are on the south side of Constitution, and specifically the Emerald Greens, which is a lot of low-income residents, Section 8 residents that don't have cars.
Yeah, you got University Greens right to the east of them on the other side of the golf
Yes,
course.
and the University Greens and the Commons are not so much student apartments anymore. They're general general residents, I would say. And as you can see, the desire path on the south side of Constitution across the tracks is there. So I do want to find a way to somehow get the sidewalk in there at some point. Don't necessarily want it to hold up getting the street project done if that's what we're.
You mean through the entire corridor or just going to the east of
I would like to connect
Oak Tree?
Dewey to Oak Tree. Well, I mean, ideally getting it to go across the track. I mean, I see people that live on Oak Tree. I just don't see, if they're going to any of those businesses on the south side, they're gonna keep walking through the dirt and across the, just to walk across, or in the street as they do now.
And we agree with you.
Even if there is a crossing there.
What we could do is make that, kind of break that out, and make that a separate project. We would continue to work
Yeah.
with the BNSF on, and we could
think that'd
add
be
that
fun.
to our sidewalk list. I think that would be one of our decent ranking ones. And as soon as we got everything else, as soon as we get something, we could do that. But we
Yeah.
could remove that. If we could remove that portion from this project, it would really free up a lot on this project. And then if we wanted to continue further to the west from here,
Yeah.
we could do that as a separate project.
And if we do
also.
it as a separate project, there may be some grant funding that would target specifically those types of railroad crossings that might get bogged down with the balance of the project. So I think we'll have a greater chance at getting it funded if we look at that segment, and we're talking about railroad crossing safety. And the foot traffic's only gonna increase with the multifamily housing project to the north of, the 7-Eleven up there.
Sure.
There's gonna be a lot more people in this neighborhood over the next few years, so. It does make sense. I think we'll have greater likelihood of success.
So ideally, I'd like to see the existing sidewalk from Decatur to Dewey redone. It's busted in front of Fire Station 3 and everything. It's kind of busted up. And then there's no sidewalk from Dewey to Ryan or to the bridge. So maybe a separate project that does the sidewalk from Dewey to Oak Tree, and then a separate one that does Oak Tree across the tracks.
Councilman, we could definitely do that, and we could get that. We could come back in the next CPTC and tell you how those two projects would rank in our sidewalk program.
And when you think about it, it's an elephant and just smaller bites, and we'll get it eaten.
If all that stabilization stuff's gonna need to be done, then I would like to go
And the
ahead
price was actually less scary than I envisioned, because usually when engineers are telling you the solution, I was expecting a much bigger number there. So that,
Yeah, 80,000, I thought, I've got to admit, I read the slide and I went, what? I was expecting that to be
almost
more
sounds
like
like a bargain.
250. So,
It's not designed yet, but
Can this project, can it do, so reconstruct sidewalk from Decatur to Dewey, can it complete a new sidewalk from Dewey to Ryan, that's one block? And then a separate project that would do it from Ryan to.
I think I would say if OU was cooperative in allowing, if they want it back where it
It's
is.
flat and it's one block, hopefully they would, but.
Yeah, well, I think we're just saying if
Yeah,
OU cooperates with us on giving us an easement to construct it on, yeah.
we'll construct the sidewalk on their property for them, that helps their golf course. And yeah, maybe, like I said, maybe a few of us can talk to them about it too. Councilmember Grant?
I was gonna say, speaking of sidewalk program, would next time be a good time to kind of go over requests and see where we're at currently?
Sidewalk update?
I can give you a sidewalk update. All the funds for this year are allotted to projects. What we're watching right now, though, is if we see some savings in the Mimosa project, which they haven't gotten to yet, because we're doing the 50/50 programs that are currently on the list first, because I want them to fix those in 10 days, but I can't seem to get them there. It's really frustrating to me. If there's a known problem, we ought to be fixing it immediately, but they save them up and then they go do them, and I'm fighting that battle. But we're hoping that we may see some savings out of that and be able to move forward on something else and take some of those funds and go to another area. We're also looking at future projects of where future years ADA transition project money may be able to go to. This year's, we're working on the large project on Lindsay Street between 12th and 24th East. And then the following year, we're have a meeting to look over plans with ODOT to do the 10-foot trail on 12th Avenue Northeast from Robinson to Rock Creek, and then also a section on Brooks down by between Wiley and Berry. So those are kind of big, I mean, those are both like $1 million projects that we're getting 80% funding for that we never would have been able to get to. So we were kind of trying to see if there's another big project like that we could land, that we could take those funds. But we're always willing to sit down and listen to where we know there's sidewalk issues that we need to address and get those on the program, and at least start knowing what our total list is that we can address, and where can we keep chasing grant money to take care of some of
If
those.
they're never on the list, they're never gonna get done.
Yeah.
Put them on the list, absolutely.
And Ryan Avenue aligns with Ransom Drive, which is the main drive into the golf course. And so when thinking about people that live in Emerald Greens or OUPD area, how they get across Constitution to the multimodal path, they're probably not gonna walk east over to Jenkins and then cross at the roundabout and then go back. So thinking about this project and what connections, either at Monitor or Dewey or Ryan, where it may not be a signalized crossing, but where we think people are gonna cross.
At least that's on a straighter stretch than the curve and the,
Yeah, since there won't be a sidewalk on the south side for a while, how they're gonna get from the south side to the north side, or where they might cross, and how we can make that safer too, with pedestrian island in the middle, or whatever it may be.
It could be like Oak Tree today where there's no crosswalk, but there's
Yeah.
ramps.
We just have to look at it.
Yeah,
I mean, we really don't like unsignalized
sure,
mid-block crossings. It's just a recipe for disaster.
yeah.
But
But if they're gonna be crossing from Emerald Greens Apartments to the multimodal path, they're gonna do that somewhere.
yeah, but we also find that a lot of times mid-block crossings really don't work. People are just gonna cross where they're at. So
we're funny that way, us people.
I would say that I'm not guilty of that, but yeah, I think I've done it myself.
Well, maybe we look at the Hawk system at Ryan and at Oak Tree. I don't know, maybe both ends or something.
We'd want to look at, we'd want to look at pedestrian counts that are crossing in that area and see if it would warrant it. That we could check into that.
Right now, I know Emerald Greens, they would walk right down Dewey Avenue and just walk across right there. So thinking about how people will use it if there's not a sidewalk on the south side. But I like the idea of splitting it up like that, and trying to find a way to still do it at some point, and working with OU and whatnot. But the Hawk system right there, I mean, I'm not against exploring that further, and the raised crossing too, I think is a good idea. Protected little island there where they can cross, like in the picture, I think
Yeah.
would be good. And then, yeah, more info about that intersection as a whole, if more stuff was needed. But any further comment or advice from council about that? Is that clear enough direction for
Love
some?
Yes, sir.
We're on it.
Thank you. We appreciate you letting us bring a little bit of an alternative plan that we think may be able to benefit the project
Yeah.
well.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys bringing that to us. I know we're trying to scrape and however we can get all these voter-approved projects done. And like I said, I would think this would be score really high because of its being the only connection and a lot of apartments and people living in this area.
Pedestrian focused. and should
I
have
mean, without this connection, without this street, I mean, transportation in Norman would be very.
The score on it was actually pretty decent
Okay.
when we scored it, but it's just getting it on the tip and getting that taken care of, and then putting it back in the system.
There was a lot more of that golf course on the south side than I thought. You really can't tell from the street. You gotta see it from the air. So, oh my God.
Yeah, and I had asked staff about putting a sidewalk on Dewey before, about from Constitution down to the apartments, but the feedback was that that is all OU owned. and
Yeah, that's
Both sides of the
OU
street.
Street, I think.
But that, like I said, that is a low-income Section 8 apartment complex, the Emeralds is, and there are a lot of people with no transportation that do live there and do walk Constitution pretty regularly to all those businesses. And some of them work there and whatnot, so, Councilmember Grant.
I was gonna ask, has Fed funding gone up for especially Section 8 areas?
So it's done by census tract when we
Okay,
work on it. And you do score better if you, in many of the grant programs, if you're in a census tract that is lower, that shows as lower income. In the most recent census, some areas of town actually did get included into that hadn't been previously. The Cedar Lane and 36 projects, most noticeably. And so we took a big run at getting raise grants through the federal government, and we were unsuccessful again. But, so we do watch that. But as far as this apartment complex being this location, we don't really see a benefit of that in our scoring mechanism. But we will, and I'm not as familiar with the ACOG, the way they do their scoring now, but we'll make sure that as we're scoring projects, that if there's any way, we look for every way we can to pinch a point, because sometimes a point is all it takes. An 89 may not get you there, an 89.9 may. And so sometimes we look for everything we can pull out of it.
okay, I kind of think it's interesting. I remember a meeting maybe a couple years ago at the train depot, and the transportation committee came through and they were asking us what we were doing for affordable housing.
Yep.
So I'm like, you're drilling into this. I wonder what that means for policy and grants moving forward in that avenue, but yeah.
That's economic, or it's not economic justice. Environmental justice. Sorry, I knew I was off by, I knew it was an E name. And that's where you get those points for the lower income census tracts.
Can we, I don't know what the cost, but can we get the approaches to the road done to the extent that we can, and then BNSF, just like on Brooks, I guess, where we did it to where as far as we could go, and then it's just up to them.
Yes, sir.
I don't know how much that.
Yes, sir. We could put that in. We could leave that in the project and just leave the crossing out of the project. Yes, sir.
Okay, that'd be perfect for me. Okay, any other final thoughts about this project? When timeline are we on for actually starting construction, maybe on this street project?
So
26, 7?
It's probably, well, it depends. If the city can fund it, it'll be sooner than later. Because right now, we're submitting projects, we just, in September for fiscal year 2028.
Okay.
And so if we can get this on the list,
yeah, we can't
the
get it on the
soonest would
list.
be 2029 for this, if there's federal funds through ACOG. Now, we're always looking for other ways.
But if we have enough accumulation of other projects within this bond program, we could turn those, because this is kind of the next highest ranked project that's currently not going. We're gonna know a little bit more. Jenkins is expected to be let in October. So November, we'll know if it got approved, and then that would be starting after the first of the year. That's gonna be a long, lengthy, hard project, but it's gonna be great when we get it done. And then, so that will help us know where we are more with our funding, and by that time, we'll have Gray wrapped up, and so we'll have a lot more better hold on our
And
projects.
you're not needing right-of-way from OU for the road part, just the part through the golf course?
Exactly.
Okay.
I do believe there by Ransom Drive, there's a storm drain connection that we may need an easement over there. But I think on the south side, we will not need it if we don't put in that sidewalk.
Okay.
Is where I think we're standing at right now.
Okay. All right.
Also, we'll probably look for funding like for the Hawk system, because those are small projects and sometimes there's a little bit of money left and
Budget
they
dust.
score pretty high. So we could potentially add something like that before we even get to the roadway.
Yeah, we could look at that and do like we're doing on 36, where we're having it designed to meet the future. Actually, in this case, we're not widening that section. We could have that put in earlier, and that may be something that we start looking at now and trying to find available funding mechanisms to get that done early to get this better used.
That'd be great. Yeah, Councilor Rico.
I remember when we went to Fayetteville, they had talked about, they had gotten a grant, I can't remember the name exactly, a TIGA grant? Is that a right, is that,
Tiger, yep.
Which is now Ray's.
okay, that's, okay,
That's now the Ray's grant.
gotcha, okay. We're talking about the same thing then.
Yeah, it's had 3 or 4 name changes over the years, and
That new money behind it.
yeah, they changed something minor and call it something different, and then they go, the old Tiger grant, so.
Okay, gotcha.
More final comments about that project? Okay, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
A couple of things I just want to bring up for the next meeting that if we can maybe get an update on Highway 9, the discussion we had a few months ago. If ODOT or whoever has responded or whatever they're wanting us to recommend, if there's any update on that, or if I need to make any decision. If there are any updates on Porter, Gray, or any other projects going on. I had over the summer, I've been meaning to bring it up, but several people asked me, but I did see it on a study, but Alameda and Crawford intersection, where it's the like 5 at once and it's
Yep.
two stop signs and then 2 of them together. So I wish we could put a roundabout there. I know we're looking at it. So.
We're looking into that.
Yeah.
In fact, we've made some movement, trying to move in that direction to get that done.
Maybe an update on that. James Garner Phase 3 update, just where we're at in the timeline for that. Now that we are cutting the
that-
ribbon at
ribbon
7
tonight.
o'clock, right?
On
On
that one, we're actually very close. We could actually wrap up plans. We have everything basically close and ready to go. There's been some consideration of whether we hold out and try to go for this in 2028 or we move today with the funding we have. And we think with the pressure of the general public and everything, we feel it would be better to go ahead and move that project forward. And there's also some advantages having that going closer to the time of Gray Street. There's some advantages there at the intersection of Gray and James Garner. So we would recommend, let's just construct it and move on.
Well,
Even
Mr.
though we'd
County
really like
starts-
to have a little bit of federal money to
Yeah.
put somewhere else. I think this one, I think we need to just be looking at moving it forward.
If county breaks ground on a hotel and parking structure, we're gonna need James Garner polished and ready to go.
Absolutely. I'm thinking even just for football season.
Not yet.
And there's also some improvements at the well that are in our project that we made in the agreement with the county. Because I can't remember, I was at a meeting and somebody was talking about the problems in front of the well, and I'm like, those are because our project isn't where it's supposed to be yet.
Yeah.
We're doing some sidewalk connections in there.
Yeah, because it seems to be working great, honest to goodness, out there in front of the well right now. It's busy all the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I know the Porter project has got some minor things that are still.
We're basically at the point of substantial completion on that. They are down to punch list items and moving that one off. So basically, in our world, we're saying that one is basically complete. They're stopping time after just a couple more really minor items.
Okay. Yeah, there's a light in front of Friendly Market that's staying on all day, so just one of those.
Let them know about that. Somebody else told me that if it
Yeah.
probably was you.
We told them to have it flash to draw attention.
Make it look like it's flickering.
Strobe light.
I came across, just for your own information, at Covell Road and MacArthur Boulevard in Oklahoma City, in front of Deer Creek High School, there's a roundabout. It's on where 2 rural roads meet, so it's real interesting. It's not very big, but it seems to, so it's something to look into.
We're actually looking at some other locations in town that we think maybe good potential locations where there's some strange, odd circulation patterns that we think could be helped with roundabouts. And some of them are getting into more of the rural, not in the straight up
Doesn't
urban
have to
area.
take as much space, yeah. And then, obviously, we're not doing it because football season is about to start next Friday, but can we get an update on the Bollard situation? I know our instruction was if we can't do it before the end of July, then wait till the season's over, so I assume that's what has happened, but whatever the timeline for those after the season might be going forward. So those are a couple of things I had been thinking about, just getting updates on over the next meeting or two, if possible. And anything about the ribbon cutting this evening we need to know? Or?
Go
It's gonna be
northbound.
beautiful. We're gonna have a blast.
Yeah, go northbound on James
Yeah.
Garner,
Park
north of
areas.
Acres, and you'll start seeing the cars lining up and stacking and.
And we're gonna have a couple of golf carts out there that seat, the extra seating golf carts. And we're gonna have people running people back and forth. If that fills up, park in the library parking lot, and we'll find you there.
Okay. And when we cut the ribbon, the street itself, it was
We're
open?
opening
That's
the
it? All
road.
things open?
We're opening it up and we are gonna light up the sculpture and we are ready to put that one behind us. That one, there will still be a few minor items. There's still some of the betterments. We don't have James Garner's.
Flatten up the Firebird?
We don't have the Norman and the Firebird emblem and his signature and all that. That's all in production, but we're gonna stop time on the project and they'll come back and install that. There were some questions and some concerns that delayed we thought it was under production. There were problems with lights. And they said, no, we're not gonna produce them until we know about the lights. And we all went, come on.
Cause we need that throughput before game day. That's,
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the whole.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
We didn't want to hold opening it for betterments on the bridge. We're excited, we're ready to get that open and public on it and using it.
Okay, looking forward to driving on it.
8 days away from kickoff too.
The critical thing tonight is gonna get everybody to leave at the same time because it's a one-lane road.
Yeah.
So Scott's gonna tell everybody to go to their car, it's time to leave, so.
Library
Like
parking.
starting the
Library's
Grand
gonna cause a
Prix or so,
problem.
Will.
Yep, I'm gonna use you don't have to go home, but you can't stay here.
It's a real street now, functioning, okay. Any final comments, council, about transportation stuff, this discussion? Okay, thank you, staff, appreciate your
Keep the good
work as always, appreciate all you for being here.